Week 2 has quickly arrived, and we are here to break it all down for you on today's episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Welcome in Lucas Wenzel, Cameron Lawrence, Tyler Plath, all three fellas hanging out with you this morning. I'll say this morning because you're going to listen to this episode on Thursday morning before Thursday night football. We're going to break down the best and worst matchups ahead of Week 2. Play a little game of fellas pick'em at the end. But first, if you're not subscribed to the podcast already, hey, make sure you do that. Leave us a nice little review. We greatly appreciate it. And if you're watching on YouTube, hello there. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up. Literally content every single day. FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Fellas, how are we feeling about going into Week 2? How are we feeling about Week 1? Week 1 in one word, and how we feel going into Week 2.
I lost a game in Week 1 by 0.02 points, so I'm still recovering from that, but I'm looking forward to the future.
That was more than one word, excuse you.
Yeah, geez. I just tuned you out completely. I'm not fantastic.
Brutal, disgusting. That's my word, disgusting.
I'm eager. I am eager. Because we had a lot of things happen in Week 1 that we need to see if they're actually real or not going into Week 2. So let's break it all down for the people. Let's discuss the best and worst matchups ahead of Week 2. Alrighty, if you tuned into last week's episode, you know we start by breaking down the best matchups and then the worst matchups. We'll do it around the horn style here. We will start with the best running back matchups for Week 1. Cameron, who is your pick for your best running back matchup?
It's actually my worst running back matchup from last week. It's the Patriots. They're taking on the Dolphins this week. The Dolphins gave up 234 rushing yards on 40 carries at 5.8 yards a carry and 3 touchdowns to the Chargers in a game where it was like, I think it was 36-34. So in a shootout, they still gave up 234 yards. And if New England wants any chance of staying in this game, they're going to have to try to find a way to control the clock, to slow the game down, keep that offense off the field, because no matter how good that New England off or defense plays, Tyreek, Tua, and Jalen Waddle are going to find a way to put up points. Ramondre last week was extremely inefficient against the Eagles, but he's a guy who averaged just shy of 5 yards per carry on the season last year. So I think that efficiency is going to come back up in this matchup. And I really like Ramondre. If you looked at his fantasy points, you're like, oh man, Zeke must have cut into it, but he did see 73% of snaps last week. So he did play quite a bit in this backfield. So I think Ramondre's got a fantastic matchup, and again, would not be starting Zeke unless you literally have no other option. But yeah, Ramondre's got a great matchup against the Dolphins.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to remind people is that, hey, just because we're talking about these matchups, some of them are going to be like, well, duh, Ramondre Stevenson, of course he's in my lineup. Well, yes, of course he's in your lineup. We're not talking about start-sit specifically. We might highlight a few players that, hey, might be deep sleepers last week. We talked about like a Rashid Shaheed last week, 19 fantasy points last week. I'll pat myself on the back for that one. But like these are the things we talk about, though. Like we'll start with the obvious players like Chris Olave in that same instance. Chris Olave was an obvious start. But Chris Olave also went for 19 plus fantasy points, right? So all of that to say, we're just highlighting the matchups where players could have big weeks, could have top 10 weeks, or once you get to the worst matchups, players who you might want to lower your expectations on, though it might not mean you actually sit them. This is merely meant to highlight good matchups, bad matchups. What does that mean for your expectations going into the week? Ty, I'll move it over to you. Who is your favorite running back matchup this week?
If I'm not mistaken, it's also my worst matchup from last week. It's the Bills. And this is mainly about James Cook because Latavius Murray outsnapped Damian Harris, which is, I think a lot of people looked at Damian Harris as a nice late round sleeper pick, at least a nice little depth piece. And not a great look out of the gate for Damian Harris, but back to James Cook. Look, against the Jets, he was a little under 4 yards per carry, And if I'm not mistaken, it was like 12 carries, 46 yards. So like not the worst, but not the best. It was pretty middle of the road, but it was better than I expected against the Jets. But 4 receptions on 6 targets for James Cook. That's awesome. That was the part that I was concerned about, was how much receiving work was he going to get against the Jets. 4 receptions, 6 targets is plenty for me. So look, you take a look at the backfield. It's a 60-40 split, which when you hear that, you're like, that's not the best. But when you look at the 40% and you see that it's really split between 2 guys, so it's a 60-20-20 split, James Cook is the guy in the backfield. Okay. Latavius Murray is not a threat. Damian Harris is not a threat. It is James Cook's backfield. So we should see some better efficiency this week with a receiving floor like we saw last week. He's a solid running back too this week for me. And I like him better than guys like Najee Harris. I like him better than guys like Alexander Madison, Javonte Williams even. I just think James Cook is a solidified piece in your lineups this week.
I don't want to take a victory lap on James Cook because we know week 1 victory laps are way too premature. But like people who were reporting out of Buffalo saying this was James Cook's backfield, those are starting to come true. That's actually a real thing that's coming to fruition here. Cameron, what are your thoughts on the Bills' backfield after week 1?
Yeah, I agree. It was just promising to see that Cook was the clear starter in this backfield, right? We were worried. Damian Harris I think Damian Harris will still take some of and Latavius Murray will switch off in goal line situations, but James Cook was the clear lead back. And this Raiders, wow, I want to say Ravens, but this Raiders team gave up 52 yards on 13 carries to Javonte Williams last year, and the Broncos passing attack wasn't exactly great by any means. So I think with a better passing attack out of Josh Allen in a rebound game, I think that should open things up for Cook on the ground.
100% agree. I'm excited for James Cook. If I'm a James Cook manager, I'm excited to see the snap shares. I'm excited to see that he was the lead back there and that really he's going to lose out on goal line opportunities, but nobody was ever expecting James Cook to be a goal line guy. We were just hoping it would be his backfield, and we are indeed getting that. Speaking of guys whose backfield should be their own, my favorite running back matchup of the week. How about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the Chicago Bears? Now, I get it. Chicago was fairly good against the run last week. A.J. Dillon was horribly inefficient, but Aaron Jones just went rampant. And I understand some of that was in the receiving game. But you look at Rachaad White. Honestly, wasn't great against the Minnesota Vikings, but I do think that Bears are a better matchup for him to get back on track in week 2. The Bears in general were just insanely uninspiring week 1. Tampa's defense, like better than I think it probably showed last week. I mean, they kept it a 2017 ball game, and the Minnesota Vikings offense is how much better do we think it is than the Chicago Bears offense?
Quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a lot better, but it didn't really show. But yeah, it's better.
Right. But that's what part of that I will credit Tampa Bay's defense for. Granted, Kirk Cousins bad pick in the red zone, but again, all that to say, like, I think this Tampa defense could actually give Chicago's offense some problems. So favorable game script for Tampa Bay. I don't think we'll see Baker Mayfield hucking it around the yard as much as we did. He'll probably be closer to, 28, 29 pass attempts than the 35 plus that he was, or 34, I believe he was at. And I think we just get a good little game from Rachaad White here. It's going to be nothing special. I don't think we're going to see Rachaad White go for 120 rushing yards or anything. But even if we see Rachaad White 75 yards on the ground, another 30, 40 through the air, maybe on a handful of receptions, I think that's totally in the cards for Rachaad White. Get the ball into your playmakers' hands. They're just not going to need to throw the ball as much in this game. I really do like Rachaad White as like a mid running back to this week. How worried are you about his inefficiency, though? Because that is the thing that worries me about Rachaad White. How much do you credit the Vikings? How much do you discredit Rachaad White?
So my problem is this is what we saw last year from Rachaad White. This carried over. Yes. He was wildly inefficient. Leonard Fournette was also wildly inefficient. So, how much of that is the scheme? How much of that is the offensive line? So I think that's all going to kind of be part of it. It will be concerning if we come to week 4, I don't think it's as concerning right now after 1 week, but if we get week 4 and all of a sudden Sean Tucker's starting to come in and look, putting just, 4.5 yards a carry and Rachaad White still at like 3.7, then it become a little concerning, but I don't think it's going to get that bad this season.
You still have to respect Rachaad White in the passing game though, too. That's the thing that's going to keep him on the field. And that at least gives the opportunity for a guy like Rachaad White to maybe make up for the lack of efficiency and the fantasy points that come from that. He can make up for it in the receiving game. And we've said this before, Baker Mayfield last year was the king of checkdowns. He checked the ball down at the highest rate. And we didn't see that maybe once or twice against the Vikings, but I have to think that we're going to see that more often as the weeks go on, as teams start to dial up more blitz. I shouldn't say dial up more blitzes because Minnesota blitzed the crap out of Tampa, but more pressure gets to Baker, the more checkdowns we'll see. And it should be Rachaad White on the field in those situations then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, is that I'm not trying to draw too many conclusions out of week 1. Like, yes, I did see a pattern from last year continuing with Rachaad White, but the week 1 isn't the say all be all of what this offense is going to be throughout the season. So I'm still willing to push my chips in on Rachaad White, especially in a matchup where I think Tampa Bay's offensive line outmatches Chicago's defensive line. And if we saw Aaron Jones get it done through the air, I think we could see Rachaad White get it done through the air as well. Let's move on to the best wide receiver matchups of the week. Cameron, so I'll have you kick us off here. Your best wide receiver matchup ahead of week 2.
Yeah, we targeted this defense last week, and this might be a theme, for the entire season. But we going back against the Titans with the Chargers wide receivers. They were a bad secondary last year, and they got sliced up for 8.6 yards per attempt by Derek Carr and the Saints last week. And to be honest, this Chargers secondary didn't look amazing either. Although you got to give credit where credit's due to the Dolphins offense as well. Obviously the Titans are going to be a different team, but I do think that, the defense might be weak enough that the Titans can at least keep it interesting and keep the Chargers throwing the ball in this one. So, Keenan Allen's a for sure start, 9 targets last week, six receptions. He was the clear number 1. And I think I would find a way to get Mike Williams in my lineup as well this week. He got knocked out for a little bit with a head injury. It was just a fluky thing. I don't know if you guys saw. He just got jammed at the line. That wasn't even really jammed. The guy put his helmet right in his chin. Yeah, and so that's not going to happen again this week. He's going to be back out there. And when he was out there, he was the definite wide receiver 2 on this team. And so I think his role is pretty well established. So I would find a way to get both of them in your lineup. And, this offense is still going to be working out the kinks a little bit on going, after week 1, new offense coordinator, trying to figure it all out. And especially if Eckler's, missing time with an ankle injury, then they're really going to have to rely on the passing game.
Real quick, I just want to take a fella's victory lap on this one. Who do you guys think was the wide receiver 3 for the Chargers?
Not Quentin Johnston, I'll tell you.
Not Quentin Johnston, baby.
Not Quentin Johnston.
But yeah, you were just talking about Chargers receivers, and I thought it was worth mentioning.
I mean, but the Chargers, I'm surprised like none of us are going to talk about the Titans wide receivers, because let's be honest, the Titans or the Chargers secondary didn't look all that great last week either. I mean, don't get me wrong. Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, much different animals than Ryan Tannehill, DeAndre Hopkins, and Treylon Burks. But like, this is a game where we'll see. Is the Miami Dolphins offense that good, or is the Chargers secondary still just as bad as it was last year? We'll see what Ryan Tannehill and DeAndre Hopkins do. But this is a game where, again, the Titans were willing to abandon the run last week to favor the pass. And if they do that against the Chargers, this could be a little bit of a back and forth game where we see Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, both get, 17, 18 fantasy points in this game. Like, that's not out of the realm of possibility. So yeah, they are by far the best wide receiver matchup going into week 2. Ty, over to you now. Your favorite wide receiver. I mean, this is just a brutal one, but it's the truth, unfortunately.
It's the truth. It's the low-hanging fruit. Philly wide receivers need to be started and held in high regard for this week going up against the Vikings. And yeah, like, no duh. like you're starting AJ Brown, you're starting Devontae Smith. I almost said Devontae Adams. That could have been bad.
That would have been lethal.
That would have been really bad.
We would have torn you apart.
Again, you should be expecting like the most out of both of these guys this week after both are targeted 10 times by Jalen Hurts against the Patriots last week, and Devontae Smith came through and scored a touchdown on some of those targets. So, look, the takeaway here is that Minnesota just chokes harder against Philly than Izzy Adesanya did against Sean Strickland. Okay,
now you're getting the MMA references in here. Oh my goodness! Now we're crossing sports.
We are crossing sports. It's never good when Minnesota goes to Philly. Okay, and like I think a lot of people forget that last year there were some things that happened in the game that if they went Minnesota's way, it probably could have been a much closer game. Like, do you guys remember when Irv Smith is wide open down the sideline?
Oh, yes.
And he just drops a bucket from Kirk? Like that goes, if he catches that, it's a completely different game, right? But the thing is, it's the Minnesota fan in me that is just preparing for the worst, okay, and expecting the worst, honestly, because I'm sorry. When you guys go back to last year, Eagles Steelers, AJ Brown has what, like 6 catches, 156 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's a very good possibility of happening this week against Minnesota for at least AJ Brown. So again, you're starting both no matter what, but just expect the most, because the most is within the range of outcomes for both of these guys.
Yeah. I mean, these Minnesota cornerbacks are just so young and inexperienced outside of Byron Murphy. It's just tough to watch this. AJ Brown, Devonta Smith could just have a field day. Now, I don't know. It's a good matchup. Now, my only thing is that are the Eagles going to get up, like they did on the Patriots, 18-0 in the first 2 quarters, and all of a sudden, they're burning clock. The Vikings could work their way back into it. Like we saw the Patriots do. They work their way back into it. They're forced to throw the ball a little bit more. My only concern is that, they can just get a jump on the Vikings. This could be a 38-6 game like we saw back in the NFC Championship before the years of Kirk Cousins. Like that's a possibility, but I mean, they could just have an absolute field day against Minnesota Vikings on Thursday Night Football. Primetime Kirk under the lights. I'll pass. This could be the Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith show against these poor, innocent Vikings quarterbacks. I'll move on to my favorite wide receiver matchup of the week. I really shouldn't have to explain too much on this one. I'll take the Miami Dolphins wide receivers against the New England Patriots secondary. We saw last week the Patriots kept themselves in the game, but AJ Brown, Devonta Smith still both went for 15 plus fantasy points, and the Eagles were actually playing ahead. Most of that game, they got up that huge jump right away. Patriots started working their way back into it, but ultimately AJ Brown and Devonta Smith still went for 15 plus. Really, I didn't even have to give you that context. I could have probably just said Tyreek Hill and just left it at that. Because this Miami Dolphins offense they're going to want to make a statement in the AFC East here. The Bills and the Jets went head to head. Somehow the Bills managed to lose. So I don't know how they lost to Zach Wilson, but they did. They're looking to make a statement on this division. So what do you think they want to do? They want to walk right into Foxborough and just put a whooping on the Patriots. And how do you do that? Come in there and you just attack with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle across the middle. Defenses can't keep up with these two. You could have 2 elite cornerbacks. They're not going to be able to keep up with these two. It is impossible. So the Patriots 11th most fantasy points allowed to wide receivers in week 1. It's typically not a smash play, but man, in a divisional matchup with the Dolphins where they're looking to come out and make a statement after what we just saw them do to the Los Angeles Chargers secondary, which again, like Derwin James isn't a bad player. All these guys, JC Jackson, not a bad player, but they got absolutely demolished by Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle last week. So I am loving them against the New England Patriots this week.
Here's my question.
Yeah.
Someone in your league right now offers you their Justin Jefferson for your Tyreek Hill. Are you taking that deal?
No, because I don't overreact to studs like that after 1 week.
Okay.
We'll regress to the mean eventually. Like Tyreek Hill is going to be great. So will Justin Jefferson the entire season. But especially going into their week 2 matchup, no, I'm not doing that.
All right.
I will hold on to my Tyreek Hill for at least one more week. What would you do? You can't skip that question.
I wouldn't do it because, again, like you said, as we regress back to the mean, it's more lateral than it is like getting an advantage over the other person.
You would have to go back and forth trading those two.
Right. Like, save your breath, save your time. Don't take that.
All right, as we wrap out the best matchups here, let's talk about some quarterback tight end streamers here. You both chose a quarterback. I chose a tight end. Cameron, who's the quarterback you're looking to stream this week? If for whatever reason you had Aaron Rodgers as your starting quarterback, who are you looking to stream this week? I mean, rest in peace, Aaron Rodgers. I shouldn't say rest in peace, but like on his season this year. I mean, what was his quote? What was his quote?
The the day is darkest before the dawn.
The night is darkest before the dawn. I will rise again.
There it is.
It's Batman.
Oh, Batman.
Just in Aaron Rodgers fashion. Anyways, if for whatever reason Aaron Rodgers was your starting quarterback, now you're Aaron Rodgers less for the rest of the season. Who are you looking to stream this week?
I am going to kind of mix tie and minds together a little bit because I just realized we're taking two quarterbacks who both playing in the same game. And so I think
it's not a bad one.
I think we can talk about this kind of back and forth a little bit. I'm taking Geno Smith against the Lions. Obviously week 1 was really disappointing, but if you remember the game last year, I'll let Ty share those stats. I know he's got them down of what it looked like last year. It was a shootout, and I think JSN's got a game under his belt. I think he's starting to get back. And so you give him JSN, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf against a Lions team that's going to put up points as well. I think this could be another real high scoring game. And if you remember last year, Geno averaged 250 yards and almost 2 touchdowns a game, or was about 18 fantasy points. So I think that's going to be closer to what we can expect. And I think he could definitely exceed that this week in what should be a high scoring game against the Lions.
Go for it, Ty. You can just jump right into yours then. Since you two are choosing two quarterbacks in the same matchup.
Yeah, my quarterback is Jared Goff. And last year in that same shootout game, Jared Goff went for 378, 4 touchdowns and a pick, which was good for the quarterback 1 overall that week. And you brought up the score of the game. It was 48-45. 93 combined points. Okay. There's little to no reason to expect anything less than 40 combined points. I'll say that. Like the total, the current over under right now on the point total is 47. It's second highest behind Jacksonville and Kansas City. Smash the over. Okay. Smash the over if I was a betting expert, but, seriously, like if Matt Stafford and the Rams without Cooper Kupp can tear apart this Seattle defense, imagine what Detroit's going to do, man. It's going to be a fun game to watch. I think you got Aaron Rodgers, or if you don't trust Daniel Jones after the last week or something like that, like 2 very viable options in Jared Goff and Geno Smith.
Since you two are talking quarterbacks, you know what? Maybe this just needs to be the bit every week. You two take the quarterbacks. I'll talk the tight ends because I love talking a good tight end in fantasy football. I love talking a good tight end in fantasy football. If for whatever reason you're without a starting tight end this week, if you had a Greg Dulcich starting at your tight end, I actually did in a dynasty league. If for whatever reason we are missing tight ends again this week, you ready for this go-to guy? How about Luke Musgrave?
Boo.
No, you missed me with that. I think he could be a nice little streamer this week. You ready for this? Week 1, Luke Musgrave led all tight ends with 72 air yards. His ADOT, 18 yards. Average depth of target was 18 yards. He went 3 for 50. That's encouraging to me. And you look at Hayden Hurst in week 1 as well against the Atlanta Falcons, who the Green Bay Packers draw this week, right? 8 targets at tight ends, 6 receptions there. You got Christian Watson, who is coming back from injury potentially. Has he been? What's his practice reports been this week? I haven't been keeping up on that. I have to check that.
Yeah, I'll check while you keep talking.
I assume he's going to play this week. It's assumed that he's going to play this week. But you get AJ Terrell on the outside. You get Jeff Okudah there as well. This could be just an over the middle Luke Musgrave show today. Keep it easy for Jordan Love, or on Sunday. Keep it easy for Jordan Love. If you need a flyer this week, Luke Musgrave might be your guy with how they've been using him downfield. I think he could be a solid streamer against the Falcons this week. You had a confirmation on that practice report yet?
Why every team tweets out an injury report and the Packers didn't? I don't understand.
They're just
trying to hide
a
something
poorly run organization.
There it is.
That is not our bias kicking in. We'll take a quick break while Ty pulls up that report to go ahead and hear. Oh, he's got it, right? Let's go. Let's hear it.
Christian Watson did not participate as of Wednesday practices with his hamstring injury.
There we go. Luke Musgrave is your streamer tight end of the week when you hear this Thursday morning. All right, let's take a quick break and we'll be back with our worst matchups ahead of week 1. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. We're going to discuss the worst matchups ahead of week 2. Now, Cameron, your first worst running back matchup ahead of week 2.
It's the Commanders running backs against the Denver Broncos. The question about Denver coming to this year, even before last year, was never their defense, right? We knew Denver had a solid defense, and last week they held the Raiders and Josh Jacobs to 2.1 yards per carry. The rushing leader from last year, Josh Jacobs, mind you. And so that's 61 yards on 29 attempts. And the Commanders also don't have a great passing attack, right? I think it's going to continue to improve. It's going to be better than what we saw last week, but this is no world-beating passing attack where Denver is going to have to spread out, and they don't have to worry. They aren't going to be able to stack the box at all. And Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson are not known for their efficiency. I shared a stat with you guys earlier that Brian Robinson has only gone over 4 yards per carry in 3 of his 13 games so far.
Oof.
Right. This dude
Yikes.
is just a volume machine. And last week he got 19 attempts. He had 19 carries, which I think was top 6 in the NFL last week. And he had 59 yards. He didn't even hit this mark last week against the Cardinals. The Cardinals are terrible. And he didn't hit it. So I just have no faith in him figuring it out this week. And after what we saw from Antonio Gibson last week, you better not be putting him anywhere near a fantasy lineup. In fact, you probably almost drop him in your I would drop him. And so, yeah, I would not be touching either of these Commanders running backs this week.
They're just so uninspiring. I can't believe that Ron Rivera didn't do something about it this offseason. Like, they're all right. Brian Robinson, 3 yards a carry here, 20 touches. Here you go. In what world does that make sense? I don't hate that. I am just not a fan of Brian Robinson's efficiency. I'm a fan of the volume he gets, but efficiency wise, I don't think we can always bank on the volume being there. Like you said, Antonio Gibson was probably the least inspiring running back of last week, which was extremely disappointing considering many people in the community were in on him as
the next
sleeper potential value. Well, I mean, yeah, we want to go back 3 years. Yeah, I may or may not have fallen for that bit. But Ty, anything you want to add on Commanders running backs?
What's the saying? Fool me once. I'm blanking on it.
Shame on you.
Yep.
Fool me. You can't get fooled again if you're talking George Bush.
Well, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on.
Shame on me.
Shame on me.
Oh my gosh. You guys, I know
guys, we need to stop recording, restart the whole thing.
Oh my goodness.
No, that's exactly that. It fits perfectly with Antonio Gibson. Like this is what, year 3 of this now? And why we're done giving chances to Antonio Gibson. So it's like you said, Lucas, it's uninspiring. This backfield is just disgusting.
Yeah.
They are the definition of mid. Like it's not like they're terrible. They're fine. They do their job. They're incredibly mid.
Yeah, no cap, bro.
Mid.
We need that as a sound bit. Mid.
Ty, I'll kick it over to you. Your least favorite running back matchup this week. Don't break my heart with this one, though. I mean, my heart's already shattered into pieces.
Oh, I'm gonna stop. Like I'm just.
I'm not. You should, because this is spot on analysis. It is.
It's the Rams running backs against the Niners, and there's some part of people. You look at Kyron Williams and you're like, well, he's the lead back, so like he could probably maybe find his way into your lineup. No, not this week, not against the 49ers. Okay. You want to know how good the 49ers run defense is?
Insanely good.
Insanely good. It made Pittsburgh only run the ball 9 times. And when you think running the football, you think of Pittsburgh. Like Pittsburgh completely just abandoned the run. So this Niners defense, miles better than Seattle. And I don't trust the Rams offensive line against the Niners. I just don't. And I looked back over some history just because this is a divisional matchup. How many rushing yards do you think the 49ers have allowed against the Rams over the last 4 games on a per game basis?
42.
37. 96.
That's a little low. 50. 50. The most in a single game was 48.
Oh,
by Cam Akers, and he needed what was it? It was 13 carries, I think it was.
Probably. He probably needed 40 carries to get to 48 yards.
Yeah. The next highest, you ready for this one? This is a blast from the past. 43 yards on, I believe, 21 carries from Sony Michel.
Yeah. Oh, we love some Sony on the pod.
The Rams just have no answer for the 49ers defense when it comes to the run game. Don't put either of these guys in your lineup on it. Like, I try not to be so definitive when it comes to like starts and sits, unless like you have to be. This is one where you have to be. They should not be anywhere near your lineups this week.
I think that brings up an interesting point, though, now. So Kyron Williams was a very popular waiver stash this week, or waiver wire ad this week. So a lot of people are going to add him, and they're probably going to say, oh, crap. So he sucks this week. So I agree. I don't see how in the world the Rams are going to have any success against this 49ers run defense this week. The question I want to ask off of that, though, is like, let's look ahead a week, because we know these players are going to suck. Like, are you still keeping Kyron Williams after this week? Is he just going to end up being a waste of a waiver wire pickup after this week? Because people are like, man, I really wasted a waiver priority on a guy who gave me 2 points this week. Like, what are you doing with Kyron Williams? Like, you just have to hold on to him, right? Like, this is something that people really didn't talk about ahead of waivers. They're just excited to add the guys who get all the points. And then it's like, wait, actually, Kyron Williams has an absolute trash matchup this week.
No, you absolutely hold on to Kyron Williams, but you would need to reconsider if there's a drastic change in snap counts and usage between the two guys. Like, if all of a sudden it goes all back to Cam Akers, then we're going to debate. But if it stays the same as it was last week, where Kyron Williams is the lead back, then you hold on to him for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yep. I
just want to add, Kyron Williams doubled Cam Akers' snap count last week. I know Cam Akers led in rush attempts, but Kyron Williams doubled his snap counts. He was the only one that ran routes. Cam Akers ran 4 routes the entire game. And then I do want to add, I don't know if you guys heard Trent Williams' quote today, but he said that he was cheering for the Pittsburgh offense in their last game because they didn't get enough breaks, and he wanted them to do something better than get 3rd and outs. So that is what the Rams have to look forward to this week, is a offense that is cheering for their defense to screw up at least one time so they can get longer than a 30-second break on the sideline.
Oh, that's like next level trash.
There is nothing more demoralizing than that, than an offensive player saying, I was cheering for you guys and you guys still couldn't do it.
That's the perfect summation of why you should be despising the Rams running backs against the 49ers. I'm going to take a look at their running backs that were incredibly uninspiring week 1 that went up against the 49ers defense last week. I don't want to touch the Steelers' backfield with a 10-foot pole against the Cleveland Browns. Now, I get it. The 49ers are better defense than the Cleveland Browns, but not only did they look bad last week, but they draw another tough matchup with the Browns this week. Zadarius Smith, I think we're underrating how big of an addition he was to this defense. I mean, he is great at closing up holes that are created by the opposing offensive line. He is great at getting to the spots. I mean, big loss from the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, we loved him here during his time in Minnesota, but in Cleveland now, my goodness, he is fitting in perfectly into that defense. They allowed the Cleveland Browns allowed less than 100 total yards to running backs last week, 75 on the ground, and I believe 18 through the air. So if you're expecting Najee Harris, he has passing game upside. I actually don't think he has any passing upside this week. And typically, these AFC North matchups are like grudge matches in the trenches. They just go back and forth, pounding each other with the run. The problem is Cleveland's ready for that. Their run defense is superior to the Pittsburgh Steelers' run defense. I do not trust Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, especially Najee Harris with how inefficient he's been for his career. I don't trust them to put up any sort of fantasy relevant numbers this year. And yes, they ran the ball only 9 times against the 49ers because they got shut out so bad. But I'm worried about that happening again this week. I don't think the Steelers are going to come back or the Browns, are going to come back and, put up points on points on points. Get up to a big 20-21-0 jump right away. But at the same time, what if Najee and Jaylen Warren split 7 and 10, let's say, and Najee averages 3 yards a carry? He gets 1 reception for 10 yards. That's not even sniffing the top 30 running backs. So I absolutely despise the Steelers running backs. This is what I was absolutely terrified of. This is why I have 0 shares of Najee Harris this year.
Yeah, I agree. Are you done? Sorry.
I'm done. Yeah.
I just completely jumped in. I was like, uh-oh.
No, I'm done.
But yeah,
they're going to suck this week. I don't like Najee Harris. Is Najee Harris a sit candidate this week?
I'm putting out a video.
I'll ask the question.
I'm putting out a video later this week, and I don't want to hint at it, but he might be my sit of the week. He's so uninspiring. He thrives on volume. If he's in a bad matchup and doesn't get the volume, Najee is going to give you a dud. So now watch. Now that I'm so passionate about this, Najee's going for 30 plus this week. So you can fully expect that now. He is laid out the argument of why I'm like OUT 100% on Najee Harris this week. But he is a volume merchant, touchdown dependent running back who is barely going to see 50% of snaps every single game moving forward. He played 52% of snaps last week, and that's what it's going to be like moving forward. I agree. I'm very out on Najee Harris. If you have him, I would try and move him for another running back too at this point.
Cam said the M word about Najee.
I would. I mean, he's not wrong though. Get what you can for Najee Harris until his value just plummets.
So
he'll get a good matchup along the way, and he'll restore his value. But until he gets a good matchup, I don't want to think about looking at him. Look, RB22 consensus for us on the week. He's barely scraping RB2 numbers, and frankly, I could probably move him lower if I really wanted to. I probably could. I don't think I'm going to, but he's my running back 22 on the week. Running back 22 consensus for all 3 of us.
So is Najee Harris Derrick Henry level merchant, or is he more okay, let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on.
He's more like Brian Robinson level merchant. That's where he's at right now.
Cam, let's kick it back to you. Let's talk about our least favorite wide receiver matchups for the week.
Yeah, I picked the Jets against the Cowboys, and I know this one's a little bit of a cop out, but somebody had to do it. I mean, if we saw what the Cowboys did last week, and it was tough, and now they get Zach Wilson, and I'm not a huge Danny Dimes fan, but I'm even less of a Zach Wilson fan when it comes to good quarterbacks, and so I think this could be a really rough go of it. And Garrett Wilson, I do think, last year we saw him finish as a wide receiver 21. I do think he does have top 15 upside still this season. I think maybe he even could crack the top 12, but he is going to be very volatile. And when he gets a matchup like the Cowboys, it's going to be the bad type of volatile where you're just not very happy. I do think that you still have to start Garrett Wilson this week, begrudgingly having to start him. And you better not be touching any other Jets pass catcher. And better not even be looking at them, look in their direction. They might not even be worth having on your team anymore. But yeah, I would just be looking at Garrett Wilson more like my wide receiver 3 this week than anything.
Is it bad that I was looking in our dynasty league, and now that I have Michael Pittman on my team, I was considering him over Garrett Wilson this week?
It's bad that you weren't considering trading him to me. That's where that was awful. No, I don't think it's wrong at all. I mean, Michael Pittman has the Texans.
Right.
I know they played well against the Ravens last week, but man, we're talking about.
I mean, Zay had a good day.
Yeah.
And he's going to be like, you look at some of Michael Pittman's targets last week. I mean, that's how it's going to be. It's similar usage to I shouldn't say similar usage to Zay Flowers, but
yeah,
Michael Pittman's touchdown was a screen catch and run. It wasn't anything special. It wasn't a downfield pass or spectacular play. It was just yards after the catch, just like Zay Jones was, or Zay Flowers, excuse me. So I'm still going to start Garrett Wilson, but I 100% agree. You really got to tamper your expectations against the Cowboys there. Ty, to you, your least favorite wide receiver matchup?
I hate to keep ragging on the Steelers, but Steelers wide receivers against the Browns is not a good matchup either. Last 4 games, because it's another divisional game, the Browns have allowed 124 receiving yards to Steeler receivers per game. Not great. And you know who just got injured on the Steelers?
Cam's player. One of Cam's flag plants.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson. So now you're left with George Pickens, okay, Allen Robinson, who had a decent little showing last week, and Kelvin Austin. Not great, not good at all. Okay. So don't get cute with this. Don't try to overthink it. Be like, well, there's, George Pickens now gets the wide receiver 1 role. Sure. But that doesn't guarantee fantasy production just by having the wide receiver 1 role. So when you look at the 3 wide receivers, Pickens is like the only one that should sniff your lineup. And I would say he's a risky bet because he's getting either Denzel Ward or Greg Newsome in a now better Browns defense that allowed 142 yards last week. So I would look elsewhere. If you're a George Pickens owner like myself, you're kind of screwed if you don't have backup options because you may have to play him. But if you have the ability to not play George Pickens and you can play someone else, do it.
But what about perfect passer rating Kenny Pickett in the preseason? I'm sorry, I had to throw it in. I absolutely love how people hype that up. Oh, this Steelers offense gonna be great. Tough matchup. One total yard of offense in the first quarter.
It would have been good if Deontay didn't get hurt.
Oh, right. Your flag plant would have made the difference. Right, exactly.
Hey, I am happy to say I have added Allen Robinson to 2 different fantasy rosters.
Disgusting. Golly.
Sneaky little stash. We'll see if he can run it back. Hey, a sneaky little stash.
Yes, he is, baby.
Deep league.
Yes. Yeah. How deep are we talking then?
We're talking like 25-man roster.
12-man. Bench is 5 deep.
Yeah, we're not talking your standard 12-man leagues. We're talking deep, let's go ahead. Like, we'll dive in a little bit of dynasty talk quick. Like, I would have had Allen Robinson in a deep 12 or 25-man roster.
I'm not
if I didn't have any
dynasty.
other options.
I was talking a redraft league.
Redraft still.
No. If he's on your waiver wire in dynasty, I'd add him.
Yeah,
I added him a redraft. I think he's going to have value if Deontay Johnson's out.
Yeah, no, redraft, I really want nothing to do with him.
Oh, well, I do. But I think he's going to have value for a little bit.
Oh, you were talking. Oh, gosh.
I was talking about redraft. I wasn't talking about
we need to move on.
Oh, my goodness.
Same with my chest puffed up for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, you go ahead and do that. You sold the parlay last week. I won't talk about that.
So did Ty.
My least favorite wide receiver matchup this week. Why don't I just piss everybody off on this episode? Atlanta Falcons wide receivers against the Green Bay Packers. Ty doesn't want to hear anything of it. Look, you know how I could break down my wide receiver matchup of the week into just like Tyreek Hill? I could probably break this one down into Arthur Smith. And that's all I need to tell you. How Drake London, cardio workout of the year last week. My goodness. 90+% of snaps. Ty, how many targets did he draw? I'll kick the dirt in your wound a little bit, make you answer that question.
Oh, look at that. We tweeted something out.
Yeah, we did, but you didn't answer my question. Way to slide my question.
Wait, you asked me a question?
Yeah, I asked you a question. How many targets did Drake London draw last week, even though he saw 90+% of the snaps?
Sorry, my ear. I threw my earbuds too hard. They're cutting out now. He had one target. Fine. He had one target.
One target. One target last week.
We've got him rattled.
We got him rattled. And now he draws Jair Alexander this week.
No, he
for the Green
doesn't.
Bay Packers. And we thought the Chicago Bears defense or offense, would take a leap forward this year. But they looked bad against Green Bay in their home opener. Now let me ask you this. Who would you rather have? Justin Fields or Desmond Ridder? Your answer can be neither. That's an acceptable answer.
I think it's pretty clearly Justin Fields.
I don't want either. And Arthur Smith, why would Arthur Smith want to expose Desmond Ridder in this game? He has no need to. So Mac Hollins, he's not even sniffing your roster. Drake London, this is more of like a Drake London thing than anything else. I just want nothing to do with Drake London, man. I don't like the matchup for him this week. I don't think Arthur Smith wants to go out and expose Desmond Ridder if he doesn't have to. He will gladly allow Desmond Ridder to just keep checking it down to Bijan Robinson the entire game if that's what he wants to do. So I am, again, OUT on Falcons wide receivers this week, and maybe more specifically Drake London.
I agree.
Fine. It's a solid take.
Let's wrap out the episode here. We need to find a better name for this segment, but let's just transition. Alrighty. Quick recap of last week. The fellas pick 'em. We had Chris Godwin, 56.5 receiving yards. Jahmyr Gibbs. So yeah, 30.5 last week. Is that what we locked in? I locked in Travis Etienne, 56.5 rushing yards. Unfortunately, mine was the only one to hit. The other two went under their projected totals, but that's okay. We're bouncing back. We're bouncing back this week. Let's go around the horn. Let's build another 6 times entry pick'em. This is all on Underdog Fantasy, where we're pulling our projections from. You can use the promo code fellas to sign up. If you're a first time registrant, they're going to give you a free square. They're going to give you a mystery free square. Now, I can tell you ahead of Thursday Night Football, it's going to be Jalen Hurts. For week 2, it's actually going to be Joe Burrow. And a free square, they're going to give you half a total yard for that player. All you have to do is gain 1 yard and you win. That's all you have. That's it. You just have to pair it with literally any other projection they have. If both of them hit, you win. That's it. So we're going to build an entry that will 6 times our entry. We'll go ahead and we'll tack a little Joe Burrow on top of it as well, since that is the free square for the people this week. So technically this will 10 times our entry by the time we have that Burrow free square. But Cameron, I'll have you start here. Who do you want to submit as your entry into the fellas pick'em stuff this week?
I'm the only one listening to my own advice, so I'm going to take Brian Robinson lower than 59.5 rushing yards. He had 59 last week with 19 carries against the Cardinals and a 62% snap share. I don't think it gets better this week, even if he has more carries. So I am taking the lower than 59.5 rushing yards.
Lock it in, Brian Robinson, lower than 59.5 rushing yards. That's entry number 1. Ty, over to you. Who are you going to put in the fellas pick'em slip this week?
Joe Burrow's teammate, Jamar Chase. So Burrow will hit after he makes his first completion to Jamar Chase. I'm taking him higher than 78.5 receiving yards. In Jamar's career versus the Ravens, he averages 7.5 receptions on 11.5 targets for 115 yards, half a touchdown. It's a bounce back game for the Bengals in their home opener in a much better weather situation. I think that's an easy one.
Jamar Chase, 78.5 receiving yards. This one's bouncing around all over the place too. Started off at 80.5 when I saw it earlier today, down to 76.5. Now back up to 78.5. So yeah, this will bounce around all over the place. You might want to go lock that in sooner rather than later before they potentially up that to 80 plus receiving yards. All right, my leg of the entry. I'm also going with a wide receiver here. Calvin Ridley, higher than 67.5 receiving yards. This feels free. Over under for the Kansas City Chiefs Jacksonville Jaguars game. 51.5, highest projected point total of the week. Ridley already went for 101 versus Indianapolis. They allowed the Chiefs, that is, allowed the 8th most receiving yards to wide receivers in week 1. He is very clearly the wide receiver 1 here in Jacksonville. That feels free to me in a game that's going to be high scoring. I will gladly take the higher on Calvin Ridley, 67.5 receiving yards.
I like that.
So we'll run it back. Ryan Robinson, under 59.5. Jamar Chase, over. Lower, excuse me. Lower than 59.5. I was doing so good. Lower than 59.5 rushing yards. Jamar Chase, higher than 78.5 receiving yards. Calvin Ridley, higher than 67.5 receiving yards. And hey, if you pair those with that Joe Burrow or Jalen Hurts free space, if you get in before Thursday Night Football, they're going to give you a Jalen Hurts free space. Promo code Fellas will give you access to that. Not only will you get that free square, but you'll also get your first deposit match up to $100. 10 times your entry if you pair all 4 of those together. Anything we want to add before we wrap up, fellas?
Keep fighting the good fight.
It's been a while since we've heard that. There's nothing else we need to add on top of that. Thanks for tuning in. If you're not subscribed to the podcast already, make sure you do that. Leave us a nice little review. Greatly appreciate that. We're so appreciative of your support over there. We see you in the YouTube comments as well if you're watching over there. We're so grateful for your support, all the kind comments that you've left us in previous videos, on this video as well. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that. Turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when all of our new episodes are up every single day. We're going to be posting like 2 shorts a day, not TikToks, 2 shorts per day. We have a YouTube video coming 3 days a week. We have a podcast coming twice a week. We have so much content on YouTube. So turn on those notifications and make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'm at Lucas Wenzel on Twitter, Camlaw, FFF Cameron, Tyler_Plath for Tyler. We will see you all next week after the end of week 2 so we can recap the entire thing. We'll see you then. Deuces.